Last week it was announced that Visceral Games had been shut down by EA. The studio was in the middle of developing a single-player Star Wars project when EA decided to rework it to have broader appeal. Well, now we know why that happened, why the studio was shut down, and we've also had some suspicions confirmed about how shitty EA's attitude is towards games.
Another video about Star Wars, Mike. So many videos about Star Wars. Just so much. Too much.
Says the guy wearing a Stormtrooper t-shirt.
Over the weekend, a bunch of new information about the closure of Visceral Games was dug up by respected games journalist Jason Schreier off of Kotaku. Schreier spoke to former Visceral developers and other former EA employees who revealed the Visceral Star Wars project was actually a bit of a mess. The project was codenamed Ragtag and it was pitched as an Uncharted-style adventure in the Star Wars universe. The project was actually being led by the creative director of the Uncharted series, Amy Hennig, and it was supposed to be a single-player only gritty heist, told from the viewpoint of multiple protagonists. EA were apparently keen to make their own version of an Uncharted game and gave Visceral the green light to start work on the project. However, according to Jason Schreier's report, the team at Visceral was suffering from lack of resources, low morale, and staff shortages after developing Battlefield Hardline, which according to a former Visceral dev, no one wanted to make, and according to the Metacritic scores, nobody wanted to play.
Visceral ran into problems putting together a prototype for Ragtag because EA insisted that they use the Frostbite engine, which powers all the Battlefield games. It was also the engine used in this year's ill-fated Mass Effect Andromeda. But Ragtag was meant to be a third-person adventure game, and the Frostbite engine is designed primarily for first-person shooters. So straight away they had to rework the engine to fit their needs. Then progress on Ragtag was halted even further, simply because it was a Star Wars game, which meant many decisions had to be actually approved by Disney and Lucasfilm before it could be implemented. Apparently there were also clashes between Amy Hennig and the design team at Visceral, which left her stressed and a bit spread too thin. According to Schreier's sources, Hennig was accustomed to the extensive support of her former studio, Naughty Dog, and she just didn't have the same amount of backing at Visceral. Hennig apparently felt the need to oversee every part of the production, which meant staff at Visceral could never get her attention because she was trying to do too much on her own.
As more issues started to emerge, EA grew more and more concerned about the project. They were reluctant to allocate more resources to Visceral, which of course only exaggerated the issues. There was also a big shift in the games industry towards microtransactions and all that shite. That, coupled with the success of Star Wars Battlefront, meant EA were now more interested in making long-lasting multiplayer games which could easily be monetized. One former developer on Ragtag spoke about the difference between Hennig's and EA's vision. Apparently, quote, she was given these massive presentations on the story, themes. EA executives are like, FIFA Ultimate Team makes $1 billion a year. Where's your version of that? This is, for me, like what sums up why EA are just so badly thought of at the moment. You have to use our Frostbite engine. You have to. Why? Just because.
Just use it.
On top of that, you have to make a game that makes as much money as FIFA and Ultimate Team and that makes $1 billion a year. Forcing the developers down this path. This worked for us in that game, so it has to work for us in this game. Like, where's the invention? Where's the creativity gone? They're trying to reproduce all their success in previous games by making them fit the same mold over and over again. It's like, all you're interested in is money. Stop it, EA. According to another former EA employee, EA were also concerned about the lack of marketable elements in Ragtag. Ragtag was meant to be a gritty story and it didn't feature any of the recognizable Star Wars elements like lightsabers, Jedi, or the Force.
Despite all these issues and the lack of support from EA, Visceral were in fact making steady progress on Ragtag, and they even managed to pitch EA a working prototype. The irony is that was to be the studio's death knell. The prototype apparently wasn't enough to ease EA's concerns, and so they made the decision to axe the project and the studio pretty much entirely. As we know, EA then released a public statement about pivoting the design of the game and reworking it to have a broader appeal before they handed it off to EA Vancouver for further development. One former Visceral employee summed up the whole experience saying, quote, honestly, it was a mercy killing. It had nothing to do with whether it was going to be single player. I don't think it had anything to do with that. That game never could have been good and come out. This is another game that EA has kind of overseen the the mismanagement of, whether or not it's directly EA's fault. It's yet another game. So Mass Effect Andromeda was the latest kind of anything that's kind of like this. Just 2 in 1 year that have come out now, where the whole business around it, the publisher's influence and the influence from the outside, and the infighting between different creative people, they just have this thing about them where they just kind of mismanage, or they at least allow mismanagement to happen, and then we end up getting either shit games or games that never see the light of day.
With this former Visceral employee saying that it wasn't cancelled because it was a single player game, that might well be true, but it seems like it was cancelled because it wasn't a multiplayer game. And there is a difference between that, because the multiplayer game, which has a longer life and they can be themed as games as a service, you can monetize that shit for longer with microtransactions and all that kind of thing. It's very clear to me that EA have some sort of vision for how they want their games to be. They want them to be these platforms where they can serve up microtransactions, where they can charge $60 for, and then they can also charge for additional content somewhere down the line. Obviously, this game did not fit into that vision, that business model. Amy Hennig's vision was different. It was a single player game, and it was, to say that because it wasn't a single player is missing the point. It definitely was cancelled because it wouldn't have made them enough money.
One thing we should point out here as well is that Jason Schreier, yet again, has done a cracking job. So you should read this article.
He's a respected games journalist, Mike. What do you expect?
I mean, you should definitely read the article, because he's spoken to a lot of people. This is a collection of stories, anecdotes and stuff from different people. This isn't one person. This isn't one disgruntled employee. It's many disgruntled employees and a few other people on the outside that have this information. So it's definitely worth the read. The link will be in the description. It sounds to me like it was a mess, but not because of Amy Hennig's fault, not because of the Visceral's fault. It's just this kind of overarching, you've got to use Frostbite, you've got to give us this kind of game, you've got to give us the kind of monetization that we get from FIFA Ultimate Team, you've got to ask Lucasfilm every time you want to decide what colour blaster laser is going to be or something. So it's understandable that it's kind of happened like this. It's totally not any one person's fault at all. And the result is we don't get a game because the creative people didn't line up perfectly with what the business people and the finance people wanted, and therefore the project's canned. It's quite a sad story.
R.I.P. EA more than anything for me.
Because they're gonna die.
If they're carrying like this, they like, people are cottoning on now, Mike. If anything's got EA written on it from now on, I'm like, nah. I know exactly what that's going to be. It's going to be microtransaction filled. It's going to be season pass. It's going to be devoid of any sort of creativity from developers. It's going to be there primarily to fulfill a goal, which is to take as much money off me. So therefore, I'm out. Yeah, I'm out. I'm not investing.
That line is going to haunt everyone who hears it, innit? Where's your version of FIFA Ultimate Team? That's it. That's EA, innit? That's EA's influence on this. Where's your version of FIFA Ultimate Team? Oh, there isn't one. Off. Alright guys, so that is the story of Visceral's cancelled Star Wars game. Do you think this sounded like a good idea, or were they right to cancel it? Would it have turned out to be a mess? Let us know what you think down in the comments. Remember to like the video if you enjoyed it, and please subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this every single day. Check out that video right there, which you can watch right now, and the link to Patreon if you want to support the channel. See you next time.